So we're going to be doing chocolates. Welcome to the Teachers Weekend here at Los Angeles Trade Tech. My name is Chef Martin Gilligan, and we're going to be doing chocolate. Who loves chocolate? What we're going to do is we're going to do some chocolate tempering techniques. So we're going to talk about all the different styles of chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate, and dark chocolate. And we're going to do that. We're going to show you. We're going to make some chocolates utilizing these amazing Swiss chocolate molds. With different flavors as well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do like chocolate dipped strawberries and things like that. Then we're going to get into the ganaches. Ganache. It just sounds so rich. It just sounds so luscious, right? Ganache. So we're going to make a ganache tart. And we're going to talk about how we can use ganache to make things like chocolate truffles. And then we can coat the chocolate truffles with the tempered chocolate that we talked about already, and maybe even finish it off with a little bit of chocolate caramel. All right, so what I have here is I have a double boiler. All right, so we're going to start off by tempering chocolate. So again, to chop the chocolate, here is white chocolate, and here is some milk chocolate, and here is some dark chocolate, right? So anyway, all chocolate, or let me just say, the dark chocolate is made up of 3 different components, right? And so when you melt it, those 3 different components separate, right? And so they actually, when they come together in kind of like chains, and they stack on top of one another, the fat and the molecules and all of that. So we'll talk a little bit about the science behind chocolate. What I did first off is I set up a double boiler. So in order to melt it, you have to melt it kind of gently and slowly. You got to understand that chocolate melts around 120, 110, 120 degrees. So you don't want to go too much higher than that. About 140, and it starts to actually burn. So you don't want to go above 140. I'm using like a stainless steel pot and a little bit of water. Now notice how I only have the water on the bottom of the pot. I don't have the water like all the way up, because I definitely don't want it to touch the bottom of the bowl. And notice how I'm holding the bowl way over here. I don't want it to contaminate or mess up this chocolate right here, because water and chocolate doesn't mix. And why doesn't it mix? Well, because of the fact that water has hydrogen and oxygen in it. And the hydrogen actually reacts with the cocoa butter that's in the chocolate, one of those 3 components of chocolate, and it actually seizes the chocolate, or it immediately causes it to come together in a way that us as pastry chefs, it's not desirable, right? So keep the chocolate away. Another way to melt chocolate, and again, if you have this in your classroom, it's a fantastic way, is to, obviously you want to use a plastic bowl or whatever, and then to microwave it for a couple of minutes. So you can microwave it, you can pop it out of the microwave, you can stir, pop it back into the microwave. Again, don't get it too hot in any one area. Make sure that you're rotating the bowl, or have that conveyor setting set on inside your microwave oven. All right, so let's get back to the beginning now. So what is chocolate? Chocolate is, and I can talk while I work, right? So I have some chocolate melted here. And the chocolate is made up of 3 different components, right? It's made up of something called cacao, cocoa butter, and sugar, right? So cacao, cocoa butter, and sugar. Now, if you got to think about it, okay, so you go to South America or you go to Central America, someplace that is by the equator, they'll have cacao plants or cacao trees. And the cacao trees actually grow this big, huge pod that comes out. The pods weigh about 2 pounds each. Wow, that's crazy. And inside the pod, you can eat the whole entire pod, the entire seed, basically. You can eat the fruit. You can eat the peelings. You can take the fruit and you can make a jam out of it. It's very, very healthy for you. But the seeds are what we're using for chocolate, okay? So what they do is they actually separate out the seeds, and the seeds come out with this milky white membrane on the outside of it. And what they'll do is they'll put that in a big container and they'll let them ferment. They'll just let it start to get a little bit funky, right? So as it gets funky, it builds up a lot of flavor and it gives off alcohol and things like that in there as it ferments. Then what they do is they take that and they'll wash it, and then they'll dry. Literally, if you go to Central America or South America or Costa Rica or some of those countries, you can actually literally see the cocoa beans being laid out onto like a driveway where they're actually drying these beans underneath the sun, right? That enables them to become this kind of like just like a seed, almost like a really rough on the outside seed, and then they roast that, right? So it doesn't really matter if they're doing it in the driveway, because they're going to roast it afterwards, which is going to kill any any sort of contamination or anything like that happens. And they roast it for a long time until it becomes almost black on the outside, and actually it'll split, the outside will split. And on the inside you have something called the cocoa nib, the nib. All right, and I have some of those here. So this is what happens after the bean has been fermented and dried and the outer shell has been removed, and now you have the cocoa nib. All right. Now inside that cocoa nib, it has the two components of chocolate. So the two components of chocolate, which are the cacao and the cocoa butter, are inside the nib at this point, right there. They actually add sugar because the cocoa, the cacao and the cocoa butter, both of them are kind of bitter in their flavor. They have amazing antioxidant power. So a little bit of chocolate every single day, first of all, it's fantastic for you, right? It lowers your heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, it makes you super strong, strengthens your libido, all of that, right? So everything. So a little bit of chocolate, right? Every single day. Now, the one component that's in the chocolate that is really not good for you is what? The sugar, right? So you have to add the sugar because you have to balance that bitterness with the sweetness, right? And they add usually cane sugar to the chocolate. So we have cacao, cocoa butter, and sugar. Now, the cool thing about it is, and the most unique thing about chocolate is that the best chocolate makers are nowhere near the equator, right? The Switzerland and Germany and France and Austria and Denmark, these are the best places to buy chocolate in the world where they make chocolate. So what do? They buy the cocoa nibs from these Central American, South American, African countries. And then what they'll do is they'll go ahead and create the chocolate, right? So what do? They crush those nibs and they make it into a beautiful chocolate. They'll add sugar to it and they'll make a chocolate out of it. Now, some cheap chocolate companies that we find, especially maybe here in America, I'm sorry to say, companies like Hershey's or Mars or whatever, they'll actually remove some of that cocoa butter because that cocoa butter, out of the three components, that cocoa butter is the most valuable out of all those three components. So, and they actually use that for other things like cosmetics, for example, right? So it actually makes your skin smooth and everything. That's why pastry chefs have such soft hands, right? Because we get the cocoa butter on our hands every day. So what happens in these cheaper chocolate companies is they'll remove the cocoa butter and they'll replace it with cheap vegetable shortenings and things like that. And that creates an environment that's not really good for chocolate making. And so the chocolate doesn't get that beautiful snap because it's the cocoa butter that gives it its beautiful snap and its beautiful shine, right? So, and there's no substitute for cocoa butter. So you have to add the cocoa butter and keep the cocoa butter back. So what they do is they crush the nib and they'll dry out the whatever's left over in there, and they can make cocoa powder. So this one is this is an American processed cocoa powder. I didn't have a Dutch processed cocoa powder on hand today, but you can see how the Dutch process, the American processed cocoa powder is that nib with all of the cocoa butter removed. All right, and then what they do is at that point they'll add back the cocoa butter and add the sugar, and then they'll pour it into these big molds, and they'll make Calabo or Guittard or Ghirardelli or whatever your favorite imported from France or Germany or Swiss chocolate companies, right? They'll make these amazing chocolates. So you want to purchase chocolate that's a little bit more expensive. Here we actually have this is cocoa butter by itself. So we have the nibs, we have the cocoa butter by itself. Obviously you've all seen cane sugar, right? Or sugar made from canes, or sugar made from sugar beets, right? But anyway, so this component here, the cocoa butter, is actually what gives it its shine and it's kind of a snap to it, right? And so what happens when we melt the chocolate, as we melted it here over the double boiler very slowly, we brought it up above those temperatures we talked about earlier. And as you can see, if you really look close, you can actually see how those components have separated, right? And so now you have the cocoa butter kind of floating on top. And then you have in the middle, you have the cacao, right? And then you have the sugar all combining in there as well, but they're separate. So at this point, this is the mistakes that a lot of students make, is what they'll do is they'll actually try to chocolate dip their strawberries, or they'll try to make filigrees or whatever out of the chocolate at this point. And it won't work. So what you'll need to do is re-emulsify or bring back together again those three components of the chocolate, right? So how do we do that? There's a couple of different methods to do that, but I found the best method to do that in the classroom setting is the seed method, So there's a table method where you can actually take the chocolate and pour it out onto a marble table, move it around. What you're doing is you're bringing down the temperature of the chocolate to a point where now the layers of the fats in the chocolate and everything try to line up, and they get those chains and they'll all line up and they'll become re-emulsified. And then when you pour the chocolate into a chocolate mold or whatever, it becomes this beautiful snap, right? So that's what we're looking for, that beautiful snap. Okay, so I have my chocolate tempered here, and I have some other chopped chocolate here. And this is, we're only dealing with dark chocolate now. We'll talk a little bit while this chocolate is seeding, or the chopped chocolate that I'm going to add during the seeding process is going to melt and lower the temperature of the chocolate. So again, I'm going to take this off of my double boiler. Okay, bring it over here. Being careful where that water goes. It might be clinging to the bottom of that bowl because we don't want to introduce any water to our chocolate, right? I'm going to add a little bit of the chocolate. So how much chocolate do you add? Well, what you want is you want the chocolate that you add to melt to the point where it's dissipated completely. You can actually put a whole big chunk in there as well. Then you can remove that chunk after the tempering takes place as well. But the seeding I'm just going to add some chunks of chocolate right to it, right like that. And then I'm going to just go ahead and mix this. And as I'm mixing this, what's happening is the chocolate is lowering, the temperature of the chocolate is lowering down, right? So it's dropping, right? So as it's dropping and as I'm mixing, we're having a re-emulsification of those three components of chocolate. The cacao, the cocoa butter, and the sugar are now re-emulsifying. Now you want to bring it down to the point where it's just going to start to set up, right? So what I like to do is, especially even if I'm using some of the really high quality chocolates, what I'll do is I'll actually add, for every 1 pound of melted chocolate, I'll go ahead and add about 4 ounces of cocoa butter. Oh, where do I get cocoa butter from? First of all, is the question people are asking right now. You can actually buy it here in Southern California in a food store called Whole Foods. Yeah, it is kind of expensive in there. So my daughter calls it whole paycheck, because I think she spends her whole paycheck if she goes there. But anyway, it's really the only store that I found. I think Sprouts also has it. But anyway, so you find a high quality cocoa butter. And again, that's going to add to the amazing qualities of this melted chocolate. So I can feel the bottom of the bowl and realize that it is dropping down. You want it to be about your body temperature. Pastry chefs will actually take this and they'll touch the chocolate to the bottom of their lip. It's not very sanitary, I know, but right, these pastry chefs have been doing it that way for I think hundreds of years. So you're not going to tell them anything otherwise. But they also have, everybody has now, because of COVID-19, everybody has those thermometers the way you just kind of shoot it at somebody's forehead and it'll actually take the temperature. So that actually works really, really good too. I just know from my experience that if I can actually look at the chocolate and I can see that really the shine just reflecting back and I don't see any streaks anymore, I know that it's right. But at this point I still see streaks, and I also have that chocolate melted so quickly that I know that it's not down to body temperature yet. So what is body temperature? About 98, 90. So you're going to go from about 95 to about 100 degrees, right? So right in the middle of that would be about 98, right? About body temperature. So we want to make sure that our chocolate's about body temperature. And that's going to get the chocolate to a place where then we can use it for things like chocolates or chocolate dipped strawberries or chocolate candies or coating the outside of our chocolate truffles or whatever, right? So again, all right, so I have that. Now I can see how now it's starting to come together. All the cocoa butter has melted. And now you can see how the chocolate is beautiful. I still have a couple of little lumps of the whole chocolate in there, so I'm going to continue to stir that. And now I know that this chocolate is perfectly tempered. Okay, chocolate is perfectly tempered. If you actually use like an instant read thermometer from your pocket or whatever, what happens is it immediately coats the outside of that thermometer. And first of all, it's very difficult to clean, and then second of all, it's not going to accurately measure the temperature of the thermometer. So you really, really need like a laser thermometer, or again, you just go from your experience of seeing that beautiful shine on the chocolate, and then you don't see any streaks of the three components, and it works out really well. We're gonna make some of these chocolates. As you can see here, we have some chocolates here, right? So I'm gonna show you what to do here. So these here will be just the bittersweet chocolate that you can literally just pop in your mouth right before bedtime, or put it on your pillow or whatever, right? The question would be, what if I wanted to, what is the difference between the dark chocolate, the milk chocolate, and the white chocolate? So the milk chocolate is the same thing. It's the three components, the cacao, the cocoa butter, and the sugar, right? but it also has an addition of lactose or milk, but it's actually a dehydrated milk. The reason why it's dehydrated is because of the fact that any water that goes in with the chocolate is not going to be too friendly in there, right? So they actually dehydrate out the milk, and once you do that, it's no longer milk, it's more or less a lactose powder, and they'll add a lactose powder to the chocolate. So this can be tempered. Again, there's no hydrogen or oxygen in there, so this is a milk chocolate, right? So it has a more mellow flavor. It has a little bit lower melting point, and all of that. So white chocolate, literally, if you look, in a dictionary or whatever, white chocolate literally is not even chocolate, okay? And the reason why is because it only has two components. It only has the cocoa butter and the sugar. So it's cocoa butter and sugar. That's what this is, right? Sometimes they'll add like lecithin, which is a soy emulsifying agent. Lecithin is also found in eggs, but they won't use that type of lecithin for chocolate making. They'll only use a soy lecithin. So again, we have the cocoa butter and the sugar. That's what white chocolate is, right? So you can actually melt the white chocolate. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put a little bit of white chocolate because I want to use the white chocolate as to decorate some of my. Right, so let's do that now. Make sure that my bowl is completely dry, completely clean, right? Set that above here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add, again, about a pound of white chocolate and about about a quarter ounce of the cocoa butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my molds. Right? We'll do heart shapes this time, okay? I have my chocolate mold, and it's completely clean, completely dry, right? It has to be completely clean, completely dry. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it up. You can actually use a ladle if you want to. I just like pulling directly. All right, and you're going to fill this all the way up, a little bit even overfilled, right? Okay. And I'll grab my spatula, making sure that there's no water on it, and I will just push it. And I'm going to make sure all of my cavities are filled. Fill up all my entire mold. Then what I do is I go to sweep off everything. Sweep off everything. Sweep the time off. You can actually, there are chocolate flavoring oils. It has to be an oil because it kind of pretends it's the cocoa butter, so it'll be complete fat. You can't use like extracts. You can use extracts when we make ganache. I'm going to show you how we do that. But for this one, you just, right, so like that. And then I'm going to place it on the tray. You can actually allow it to drop a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and make another one. I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this one. I'm only going to do a few. Just half. All right, so what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to allow it to fill up the cavity, and then I'm going to pour out all the excess. So I'm going to pour out all the excess. And I want it to coat the inside of the mold itself. Then I can fill it with brandy cherries, whatever I want, right? Ganache, I can fill it with ganache. Coconut, you can have it filled with nuts. You have it filled with caramel. I scrape it, and then I go ahead and I just empty out the whole entire thing, just like that. Right? And then I'm going to stick that in the fridge. Thin coating of chocolate on the inside the candy, right? Out. Okay, I've already made some ganache, white chocolate ganache, and what did I do? I have the white chocolate ganache, and I went ahead and made it into a chocolate truffles. So you see how the inside is filled with a ganache, so really amazing. As this is melting, I'm just going to go ahead and mix it. As soon as it melts, I'm going to take it off. I don't want to over melt it. And then I'm just going to let this cool down, but I could also add a little bit of the white chocolate to it, and that'll seed it and bring it back down to temperature. And it's not so much of an emulsification issue with white chocolate because you don't have that cacao in there. It's only cocoa butter and sugar, but you still do want to emulsify all that sugar back together again and get the chains going again, the fat chains. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this off. I've taken the recipe for the bittersweet chocolate truffles from your packet, and I'm going to show you how to make ganache. 3 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate and 3 ounces of bittersweet chocolate chopped together in one bowl like this. And I got full fat heavy cream, right? I'm going to take that and I'm going to stick it into a pot on the stove here. Okay, crank this all the way up. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add that. Get all the cream out of there. I got like a 40% heavy cream, a heavy whipping cream. Again, manufacturing cream, heavy whipping cream. It's all little bits of differences with regards to the butter fat that's inside the cream, right? So you want to do the highest fat when you're dealing with ganache. We used to have our chocolate class at my recreational cooking school, and I used to say, okay, so when you're making chocolate truffles, there's a motto, and it goes like this. Ready? And I'd say, you repeat after me. Fat is good. Everybody would say, fat is good. And I'd say, fat is great. Everybody would say, fat is great. And then I would say, give us more fat. And everybody would say, give us more fat. And then I'd say, then you do a little dance, right? So I got the chocolate. I got it into a bowl, and I want to make sure that this is really, really hot, okay? So bring the cream all the way to a boil. You can actually see it start to stratify, right? Stratification is when it fills with air, right? And so don't let it overflow. Stay on top of it, but just go ahead and pour it all of it directly right into the middle of our chocolate. Then I'm going to take it off the cold table. And it's not really going to get hot from here, but it's not going to get cold either. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mix it. All right, you want to mix it. You can actually mix it with whisk if you wanted to at this point. I don't want to incorporate too much air, so I'm just slowly mixing it with the spatula. Right. Now this is just the perfect amount of cream for making a light ganache, right? A light ganache. So in your video that I actually showed you, you can actually pour this over the top of a beautiful chocolate cake that you've covered with a chocolate buttercream, right? To make that beautiful ganache cake. Or I'm going to show you how we can do a tart. Or you could actually take it and fill those chocolates, right? And stuff like that, whatever. Just cheating a little bit. Again, in my experience as working with chocolate for the years that I've been doing this, you know what I mean? It just looks like a little bit of, it was a little bit too thick. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more cream. And then, now it's perfect, all right? With the cheesecake class, you actually saw that I created like a graham cracker crust. Well, this is the same thing. It's the exact same recipe, except I used cookies, chocolate cookies. Like you could use Oreo cookies, or you could use like chocolate little graham cracker cookies, and then just crush them up in the food processor. All right. And so I've gone ahead and mixed butter with that, a little bit of sugar with that. Gone ahead and pressed it inside a tart pan. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to just pour it out. Oh. That's amazing. And make a beautiful chocolate ganache tart. How easy is that? It's only like 6 ingredients total. Right? And then I'm just gonna kind of move it around a little bit. And wow, this is like so rich that you can only serve like little slivers with your coffee. This is good for conversation because it has a lot of caffeine in it. So if you serve it with coffee, everybody's gonna be talking really, really fast. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and pop that in the fridge. I'm going to show you what that's going to look like here. So with that exact same recipe or exact same style of recipe, what I've done is I've made some white chocolate, all right? And so I have it over here. And in your recipe, it actually has you taking the chocolate, pouring it over white chocolate, and then I add zests of lemon and a little bit of lemon juice. Now, it's fine to add the zests of lemon and the lemon juice. You can actually add like almond extract if you wanted to make it kind of an almond flavor, especially if you're maybe coating almonds with it or whatever. And then you can add like mint if you want to make like a mint ganache or whatever. So at that point, you can just go ahead and make any kind of flavor you want. And then what you do is just roll them into little balls like this. You see? Just like that. So I've gone ahead and done that already. Then I pop it in the refrigerator. So I let the ganache cool off. I make the ganache, I let it cool off in the refrigerator, and then I just grab some and I just roll it up and put it into a truffle, right? So truffles, kind of what you want is, remember, truffles are like little mushrooms that grow at the base of the trees in Périgord, France, right? There's mushrooms, right? Well, they make chocolate truffles. They're supposed to resemble chocolate from France. You know, those earthy, wonderful, aromatic things that you put slice on the top of your foie gras or whatever, right? Okay, we're gonna make chocolate truffles, right? So what do I do with these chocolate truffles? So what I do is I take one sheet tray that's got the product on it, tempered chocolate, and then I will take another sheet tray right next to it right here as my All right, so it's an assembly line type technique. And at this point, you can actually do the chocolate dip strawberries. What you want to do is you want to clean the strawberries and then dry them, literally dry them with a paper towel. And so you can actually take the strawberries and you can dip them in the chocolate. And you want to let them drain. You want to really, really let them drain well, because otherwise the chocolate will eventually drain and it will form like a foot on the bottom. The French call that le pied. Matan! What's your strawberries? You have too much pied. Matan. Oh, okay. So again, you don't want to have a big foot on the bottom. So again, drain them well. Remember that you'll ruin the chocolate if you have water on the outside of the strawberry. So remember, wash the strawberry really well. First of all, choose the strawberries that are beautiful, right? Then wash them really well. And then dry them up, literally dry each one individually off with a paper towel, okay? Because again, you'll ruin your tempered chocolate if you have any water at all. Any water at all, okay? Okay, here we are. Okay, now I'm gonna be able to take my chocolate truffles and I'm going to drop them in, like maybe three or four in there at a time, and I just get them out. And the best way to do it is to literally just get dirty. Just get dirty with it. 1, 2, and again, you're draining them so that you're not making big feet on the bottom, right? The overflow or the draining of the chocolate over the top of the truffle will run and continue to sit up on the bottom, and you'll have these big feet, right, or big bases on there. You don't want that. It's going to form a little bit of a flat side, and that's can't help that. But again, this is going to be snap, shiny, rich chocolate on the outside of your truffle. Snappy, shiny, rich chocolate. You can make these in advance, like even like 5-6 days in advance. You know, you want to keep them at room temperature, cool, dry place, wrapped up completely with plastic wrap, double wrap, maybe cater wrapped, right? Again, you can actually, inside the ganache, you can put peppermint or almond extract or even vanilla extract or any of the flavors that you want to incorporate into your ganache. You can go ahead and do that at that point. You can actually take the ganache and wrap it around maybe a toasted hazelnut or some dried fruit, maybe a dried cherry or dried apricots, or anything can be on the inside of your ganache, right? So you can have like a surprise in there. I've actually had students do, hey chef, we had these grapes in here. Can we do a grape? And it was really amazing because you pop the truffle in your mouth and you bit down and you had an explosive splash of grape juice in your mouth afterwards, which was amazing. It came out so good. I feel like Lucille Ball, right? And working in the candy factory. Coat some of them with milk chocolate. You can even coat some of them with the white chocolate. Let me show you how that looks. And you can see already how, even just because it's kind of cool in this kitchen right now, how it's already starting to become this matte finish. As it gets cooler though, it'll get more and more shiny, right? More and more shiny. I got my white chocolate here, and I'm gonna go ahead and temper that by adding a little bit. Remember the seed method, right? So I add a little bit of white chocolate to that, drops down the temperature of that chocolate, and that will enable me to go ahead and utilize that coating technique, right? So I have this one right there. So seeding method. Again, the table is on a cold surface right now, and also it is, so that's pulling the heat out as well as the bits of chocolate that are in there, right? I want to make sure that I melt all that out, because if I'm going to be piping this, I want to make sure I don't have any lumps in there. No chunks. So if it's cooling down too quickly, that means the table is too cold underneath, and I don't want to have to reheat it up. And I definitely want all that chocolate to melt inside there. If I need to, I pop this back and pop it in the microwave for a couple of minutes, or pop it over my double boiler. What I'm going to do is make a cornet. I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's show you how to do that. So I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper. And I'm going to just cut a triangle, a isosceles triangle, right? So you can tell your students that you're learning geometry in your culinary class, right? So anyway, so you have the longer side of the isosceles triangle, and what you want to do is you want to envision the middle, right here. You envision the middle. So I'll actually take my finger and place it there, and then let me turn this way so you can see better. So then what I'm going to do is literally reach over, like, hello, reach over and grab this side, and then bring the point corner down to the bottom while I'm holding the top, right, like there. See that? So the bottom, the points meet, and this meets right in the center. Then what I'm going to do, let go of this side and allow the top part to literally just flop over, and then bring the points of that one to the bottom there, like that. See? Right there. See that? So now I have 1, 2, 3 points. I have this. All right, so this is not very sharp. So what I want to do is pull down on the outside and push up in the middle until I can create a very, very sharp point up here. So I'm strategically doing that with my thumb and fingers to make sure that, all right, and once I have it really super tight, what I'll do is fold this in like this. And what I'm making is what's called a cornet, or like a piping bag, like a small piping bag that we can use for decoration, right? So let me show you what that looks like. So I have some other melted chocolate on this side. I'm gonna go ahead and mix that. I'm gonna use this for the cornet because I was worried about that one having lumps still. It cooled down so quickly. I only had such a small amount of chocolate there. All right, so now I have my cornet, and I'm gonna go ahead and, I'll just pour it in. I don't wanna overfill the bag. Number one mistake my students make, they overfill the bag. All right, so don't overfill the bag, and then I'm going to, see where that fold was, the original fold? Make sure that fold is along the center seam line, okay? And then what I'm going to do is fold away, so it tightens down that seam line. See how it's tightening down the seam line as I'm pulling away? And then I fold this way, so that seam line is completely locked in now. You see that? So it's locked in. And then what I'll do is come over here and cut just a teeny tiny little tip off the bag, just like that. All right, now I'll hold the seam line with my fingers, see this? And push with my thumbs, right? And what I can do is, I can let the flow out. All right, so you can make beautiful filigrees, right? Right, and these will set up perfectly, and you can lift them up and place them on your cake or whatever. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how I'm going to decorate the chocolate dipped strawberries and the truffles. So you want to kind of drizzle over the top. And everybody says, ooh, ah, whoa, fancy. Just like that. Kind of like See's candy, right? Okay, keep this nearby. All right. So to show you what we'll do with the chocolate dipped strawberries. Show you how fast you do this. You're not teaching it, you're just bang it out. There we go. Perfect bag. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of the white chocolate. This one has kind of a little bit of lumps in it, so it's going to be a little bit of a difficult time. But so they are coated now. What we can do is make a tuxedo. So you kind of dip it going one direction, and dip it going the other direction, and you make like a little, right? And then set that over here. Make sure it drains really well. So let it drain really well. That first one had too big of a foot. We're out of practice on this one. Again, if you haven't worked with it in a while, it's like anything, you know, you have to practice. Do it every day. You can make like 200 of them in like 10, 15 minutes when you're really, really well practiced, right? And then what we can do is, and then you give them a little bow tie. Okay. It's a little, right? And or you could also just drizzle over the top like this. Look. Oh. Lumps. There you go. So drizzle, drizzle. All right, so you have your chocolate, right? So we're gonna pop this in the fridge, so I'm gonna show you what that's gonna look like a little bit later after it sets up. Okay, so this part, this looks really great. So this one, what we'll do with this is we'll actually fill this up with some ganache, right? What I'll do is, you know what? I'll make some peppermint. So again, how much peppermint do you like? Well, I'm gonna add about 1.5 tablespoons in here. And again, inside the ganache, it's fine, right? Boy, I can smell that peppermint. Wow. And then, there we go. So now I can take this and fill these up. No, I don't want to fill them all the way up because I'm going to cover the top with the tempered chocolate right after the ganache sets up. So I don't want to fill them all the way up. I want to fill them about 3/4 of the way. And again, these made the chocolates we showed you earlier when I cut them open, right? I had a Chef Robles was here yesterday. He said, hey, you should fill them up with pineapple flavored because they look like little pineapples. Look over here, see? And they have that little kind of a pineapple look to them. So you can do pineapples. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this back in the fridge. And then I'm going to show you how to make some white chocolate truffles. Remember how I do the scenario where it's rotated from here to here to here, right? So it's like a assembly line type scenario. I'm going to go ahead and drop in. Again, these are super soft. See how soft they are? They're soft, right? So they have soft centers. So the outside, we want it to be snappy. Shiny, snappy. Right. I think it's got a little bit of dark chocolate on them, but that's okay. All right, so it's coating the outside. So now I have my, you actually can have like chocolate dipping tools and all that kind of stuff. You can actually use a fork as well. Again, I'm just a hands kind of a guy. I just learned this way. This is the way I learned. So, and again, you can do them super fast this way if you have, if you're doing like enough for 1,000 people. Each person gets one at the end. So you have to do, 1,000 of these, and you have so many other things you have to do as well. So you're just working super fast. You can coat them a couple of different times too. You could also coat them with cocoa powder as well. So a lot of my students like to do that. Traditionally, chocolate truffles have a cocoa powder coating on the outside. So let's try a couple that way. We'll try a couple with the cocoa powder coating on the outside. So I'll drop them in the white chocolate. Go ahead and mix them up a little bit to get them coated with the white chocolate. And then I will grab a little bit of cocoa powder. So we'll just put a little cocoa powder. And then as they come out, right, we're just going to roll them in the cocoa powder. So we're going to use like a wet hand, dry hand method. How many of you are chocoholics? I'm a closet chocoholic. All right, so what you do is, again, you can go ahead and coat that. And then, right, so you have a little bit of powder on the outside. Look at how beautiful that looks. All right, so again, it's a traditional way of serving the chocolate truffle, European way, And you got to be careful that you don't breathe in as you pop it in your mouth, right? That ever happen to anybody where you get the powdered sugar or the cocoa powder? So in your recipe packet that I gave you guys, I get a lot of different types of chocolate recipes. And again, if you have time, you can actually go to my YouTube channel. I have a lot of those recipes shown on there. We also have a YouTube channel here at Los Angeles Trade Tech. We want you to go there as well. I mean, we didn't even have a YouTube channel, so it's one of the benefits of the whole pandemic thing is that we have a lot of new now videos on our YouTube channels and stuff. So really fun. Okay, so chocolate truffles. Let's go ahead and just plate some of these and get these looking beautiful, and then we'll call it. All right. So I have as you can see, I have the ganache, and it's fully set up. I'm tipping it all the way to the side. You can see it's fully set up. Another way to kind of elevate it to the next level, you can actually put rosettes of chocolate whipped cream on top. I like to actually just dust it with a little bit of powdered cocoa. You can do powdered sugar also. You put it onto a tray so it'll make a big mess. All right. Okay, and watch. So a little bit of a breeze in here. And just dust that with powdered cocoa. If you had like a doily, you could actually put a doily on top and make like a design. You could dust it right through the doily. All right, that as well, right? So, okay, then I'm going to just go ahead and just take it, and I'm going to pop it right out of, wow, look at that. I'm going to pop it right out of my tray, and look at how beautiful that looks. And it's crispy on this side, and it's nectar chocolate, wonderful yumminess on the inside, right? And it kind of has that bitterness from the cocoa powder on the outside. So I'm going to slide this super carefully right onto my plate there. You could put some chocolate dip strawberries around. You can even do this. Watch this. So I can take this and you make a chocolate truffle tart. Why not put chocolate truffles on top? So one slice for each person. Tart topped with chocolate truffles. Right? So, okay, there's that. Now we can take our platters and we can place our chocolate dip strawberries on top. See, would you like to have some chocolate dip strawberries with your coffee? And everyone's going to remember that it was the most amazing dinner ever at your house, right? Line up some chocolate truffles here. And we also have some beautiful candies lined up here, right? White chocolate truffles. We have some rustic, call these rustic truffles. There we go. Wow. Looking amazing, right? And then okay, I'm covered with chocolate now. And but again, we learned a little bit about chocolate, right? We learned that chocolate has three components. What is it? Cacao, cocoa butter, and sugar. When you melt it, you separate them, but we can temper that and pull it back together again by pouring it onto a table and working it, or adding a little bit of chocolate to it and making, that's called the seed method, right? So we worked with chocolate ganache, made some chocolate truffles. We worked with melted chocolate and tempered chocolate, and we made some chocolate candies. We made chocolate tart. So again, you can have fun with chocolate in your classes. Hopefully, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to reach out to me via email, or you can even call. My number is being forwarded to my cell phone at this time on our website. So anyway, enjoy. Thank you. And don't eat too much chocolate.